Howdy, everybody. This is the Ask the IT Expert webinar from our wonderful friends at ISAC. I'll go around the room here real quick, but I'll introduce myself. My name is Joel Rohne. I'm the ITGIS Director for Worth County. I've been here for about 16, 17 years now, and happy to be a part of the program today. So Micah, do you want to?
Sure, I'm Micah Van Maanen. I'm the IT Director for Sioux County. I've been here for about 20 years and happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Mr. Haan.
Yeah, I'm Andrew Haan. I'm the IT Director for Marion County, and I've been here about 8 years and also happy to answer any questions.
Professor Kava. And you're muted. Your mic's not working.
All right, hang on. Okay, there we go. How's that? Is that better?
Good.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm Tony Kava. I work for the Pottawatomie County Sheriff's Office. I can't figure out a microphone because I'm not an IT director, but I did work in IT at Pottawatomie County for about 15 years, and I do digital forensics, cybercrime investigations, cybersecurity outreach, and a little bit of cybersecurity work and IT work for the Sheriff's Office. So there you go. And my mic.
Now, perfect. Dylan?
Dylan Young, IT Manager at ISAC and software developer. Say most of my skills are in the development era. So if you have any questions in there, I'll happy to answer them.
Sounds great, folks. So we're going to keep this kind of very informal today. The reason for this call was, of course, October is Cybersecurity Month, and that has become pretty popular nowadays. You can't pick up a newspaper or read anything without seeing, somebody getting hacked, somebody getting ransomware, something happening on the cyber frontier. So, and we all know that probably isn't going to go away anytime soon. It's probably just going to get worse. So with that in mind, those of us who are IT folks or IT professionals, I guess, if you want to use that word. Yeah. We're always available. We're always a resource for county folks across the whole state. So I just wanted to open this up and see what questions are out there. Just want to make sure that everybody's aware that ICIT does have some programs in place that, if a county is struggling with technology right now, or there's some issues or something happening, be sure and reach out to us. We can provide, quite a few resources along with our good friends at the state and also at the federal level now. So, lots of folks that want to come in and help you folks out. So with that, Katie, do you want to kind of jump us off?
Yep. So we had a question come in. Do you have a recommendation for an app to store passwords, or recommend a different way to store the load of passwords that we have?
Jennifer from Clayton County, maybe? That sounds familiar?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So hi, Jennifer. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a host of different applications out there that you can use. And we strongly, recommend that you have some sort of password keeper. It's getting nowadays where, you don't want to reuse those passwords. You want to make sure that you're making them very complex. And the older you get, the harder it is to remember some of those things. So personally, I use Dashlane. Dashlane is a product that I can put on my phone, I can put on my computer, and I just have to use one master password to open up all the rest of my passwords. So I'll let the other groups here answer, and then we'll get to the second question. Micah?
Sure. So similar to Joel, we use LastPass. That's another password manager that's out there. And, one of the nice things about it is, even if, one of the concerns is you have these companies that are storing everyone's passwords. So what happens if, one of these companies gets hacked? Well, LastPass and these other companies have it in place where they encrypt your passwords in such a way that even if their company was hacked, they're not going to get at your passwords. So it's a safe way to store your passwords. It's a safe way to not reuse passwords, because oftentimes hackers will, if they figure out one password for one of your accounts, they'll try to use it on multiple accounts of yours. And so having different passwords for different sites is a great way to go.
All right, Andrew, Kava, anything to add?
Sure. I just want to add that, it's like Micah said, we also use LastPass, but it's important to make sure that your passwords are very strong. And sometimes it's hard to remember a really long, strong password. Sometimes I see passwords on sticky notes, on monitors, under keyboards, under mouses, all strewn around your desk. That's definitely not the place to store those passwords, because we don't know who might happen to see those. So it is definitely important to use some sort of password manager.
And there was a follow-up from Catherine. We'll get to the encrypted spreadsheet here in a second, but there was a follow-up from Catherine. You guys want to take that one?
Is there a way to
Yeah.
recover a master password from LastPass?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you're using the enterprise version of LastPass, there is your IT department or whoever is keeping track of your LastPass account can do some trickery in the back end to recover a master password. If you are using the free version of LastPass, I don't know that there's a good way to do that. You're going to be in probably in trouble there. I do know it's not very easy for them to recover the master password, but there are ways to do it in LastPass if you're using the enterprise version, the paid version.
ISAC uses, it's kind of the same thing you guys are talking about, but it's called KeyPass. And instead of a master password, I believe it uses like a certificate or something like that. So as long as you have access to that certificate, then you can decrypt the passwords. So obviously backing up that certificate's super important.
And I was going to mention KeyPass as well, because I'm cheap. And if you're cheap and or you like open source software, KeyPass or KeyPass XC is actually a really nice version of it. Is open source, it's free, it's not cloud-based, so you're going to have to keep track of the file yourself, but you set a master password, or you can use certificates, or you can use tokens too. If you've got something like a YubiKey, you can use a hardware device or a combination thereof. But anyway, you set a nice strong master password. It's a free password manager for you. Downside is that it's not, cloud hosted. So if you want to be able to get to it everywhere, you're going to have to figure out how to do that yourself. I use Dropbox for that personally, but yeah, KeyPass is a great one and it's free. We've mentioned LastPass, and Joel, what was the one that you used in Worth County?
Dashlane.
Dashlane.
Say, Tony, while you're on the horn there, do you want to talk about encrypted spreadsheets for password protection?
Sure. So yeah, so I'll be honest, I'm not entirely against it. If you were a small operation, if we're talking about a couple different people need to share passwords, the downside to it is that the protection in, say an Excel spreadsheet is not necessarily as strong as something like KeyPass or whatever. It doesn't do things for you like generate passwords, because KeyPass or LastPass or any of these password managers can generate nice, strong passwords for you and keep track of them. So there's that advantage to it. The other thing about it is that if somebody gets a hold of that Excel file, like I said, the protection on it is not as strong. So if an attacker gets that and can spend some time trying to guess a password, they can do that offline, potentially get into your passwords, and then everything's lost. I would use KeyPass over that if you can, and it works the same way. It's a file that you can still share with other people, but it can be much more secure than that. So I don't know. I don't want to say no if it's just two people that are sharing something that's the easiest way. It's better than putting it on Post-it notes, or it's better than putting it in an unencrypted document. But I'd strongly recommend using a password manager in lieu of that.
All right, thanks, Tony. Chris Colby, is that the next one, Katie?
Yep.
So Chris has a technology question. So received a fax from Syria, and it is from someone talking about having cancer and wanting support. Should I be worried that they have my county fax number? So Chris, I imagine your county fax number is probably posted on a website or something like that, and it's public record. Is it a concern? I don't think so. I mean, I think the days of spoofing or fax spoofing, I don't know if there was a term back in the day for that. Where you've got those faxes from the cruise ships wanting to send you on a free cruise or something like that. As fax technology has kind of moved away, and hopefully we'll die an untimely death here pretty darn soon. So I think a phone number is just like anything else. It's a public record. I guess make sure you got enough paper loaded up. I don't know, Anybody want to weigh in on that one? I don't know if I covered it, but Dylan saying no. Well, you were born after
Yeah,
fax.
I can't say I've actually used the fax machine, so.
Thank
No
you,
help here.
Generation Z, for weighing in on this important topic. Appreciate it.
Hey Joel, there is some alternatives to that. So we're joking a little bit about faxes. They're pretty old technology, and most of us IT folks really hate them because they're just hard to deal with. So some of the alternatives you might consider looking into would be like an electronic faxing service. And some of those electronic faxing services can read your faxes, or at least scan them and look for spam. I would call this spam, basically no different than spam in your email. And some of these e-services can take those spams and just not deliver them for you. And so that way you don't see that garbage out there. I use an e-faxing service called eGoldFax. There's dozens of them out there that are good and that maintain compliancy. HIPAA compliancy would be a big one to watch out for in the county space. And that's a good way to get rid of a fax machine, maybe save some money on a fax line that you're paying for, an analog fax line in your county. We've done that for the majority of our fax lines here in Marion County, and it's worked very well for us.
So there's a follow-up to that, Andrew, if you saw that from Jennifer.
Can electronic faxes be searched or viewed for PII? They can be, depending on how you set it up. So you can set them up to be OCR'd, or optical character recognized, where you can search them if you want, or some of them simply will just send a PDF to your email, and then your software on your computer can do that. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not. Hopefully that did.
If not, Jennifer, it's Marion County. You can just look up his website and get a direct line to Andrew for that information. So.
Oh, if you don't want to view it.
Oh, okay.
I guess I'm not sure the question. So you're saying you want to have a fax, receive a fax, but not have staff view the PII items? Is that what we're asking? Anybody else interpret that differently?
I think maybe there's a concern about that fax or that electronic fax coming in. Oh yeah, that's so they can't.
Yeah, sure.
They can't get hold of it.
Yeah, it's similar. A lot of these when they're meeting compliancy, so PII, HIPAA compliancy. If it's a truly compliant service that you're using, the owners of that company or the workers in that company should not have access to your files or your faxes. They should be encrypted. And so if it's following proper guidelines and HIPAA requirements, you would be the only people that could see that document.
I would go a step further on this, in that we use faxes a lot of times only for PII, because the health industry, for example, hospitals, they love fax machines because the feeling that we get is that they're secure, because you're thinking of the traditional fax where you send a piece of paper over and it's a point-to-point communication. But once you enter into e-faxing and everything's going through the computer, a fax becomes an email in a lot of cases. And so it's not safe to trust email with that. It's not safe to trust a fax with that, really. But you can't control what people send you, and you are going to get hospitals and doctors that are going to send you information. The thing I would say, the best way to test it would be to ask yourself, what can you see when you log in? So if you look at one of these vendors and you log in as an administrator, can you see every fax sent to every recipient? Or is it a sort of thing where you can only see metadata and you can see, yes, a fax went here, but you can't actually look at the fax itself? Whatever you can look at in your login as an administrator, an attacker who gets that access could do the same thing, or somebody at that company. So it can be handled a lot of different ways. If it's something that you're hosting on your site, it might be that once it reaches you, you're in full control over it. But Yeah, it's kind of it's a heavy question. The e-fax is very convenient, but getting people away from faxes and moving them towards secure email solutions like Virtue or Office 365's secure email, any of that stuff, probably would be an upgrade over the old fax machine. It's just never was that secure, but it's certainly less now. So.
All right, I hopefully great conversation, guys. Yeah, that's I hopefully we hit that horse pretty good, and it's not living anymore. But great questions from the audience. Thank you for the thumbs up. Appreciate it, Jennifer.
Joel, we have a question that was sent in. Is there a specific certification or form of documentation that an IT worker or IT director for a county would have showing their knowledge base or expertise level in the subject?
Well, speaking as a non-expert, I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Kava. I think he might have some.
Well, what makes you think that I'm an expert?
So, looking at that, and I'm sure the other guys can answer as well. There's certain certifications that IT professionals can get. So, there's Security Plus, Network Plus. I believe it's through TAI. Is that it, guys? I'm certificateless right now. So,
you mean CompTIA?
CompTIA. Thank you, Tony. So I mean, they can certainly go out and get those certifications to demonstrate that they've done the research or they've done the studying and were able to complete the test. One of the things that I'd caution against is just using that as a litmus test for hiring or evaluating an IT professional. There's lots of different skills that we as county IT folks have, or ISAC IT folks, as in Dylan's case. That maybe are not certifications or degrees or something like that, but on the job or maybe it's project management skills that we bring to the table or something along those lines. So what I miss, guys?
I'd be happy to add something, but I don't want to talk a lot. So Micah, Andrew, Dylan.
You're talking. You're there.
Okay, well, yeah, you hit on the CompTIA certifications. I think those are good baseline certifications. They have one called A+. That's basically your help desk certification. It shows that you know a little bit about how to repair computers, and customer service is actually part of that too. And Joel's right. Just looking for certifications alone doesn't mean somebody knows the job. In fact, there are a lot of people that know the job without ever getting a certification. So you got to look at the complete picture. But if you wanted to set a baseline or maybe some training to do once you get somebody on the job, once you've actually hired them, the A+ was the baseline we implemented at Pottawatomie County in the IT department for our help desk people. We wanted them to have that within 6 months of being hired, and we actually paid for them to go get that. Above that, there's a Network Plus. It's specific to networking. That was our baseline standard for network administrators. When I was in IT, we established that. There's a Security Plus. It's a really good security certification. It's not as heavy as like CISSP or CISA or any of the really big ones, but it's a very good non-vendor specific treatment of those topics. There is a certification called ITIL. It stands for Information Technology Infrastructure Library. I know because we've got Wikipedia up over here. But ITIL, I'll call it, is it is a standard used in a lot of private companies in that. 99 counties in Iowa, there are maybe the top 5 or 8 or so would have an IT department that's so structured that would make sense, I think, at least from what I've seen. I think to begin with, those CompTIA ones are great to look at. Look at the complete picture, though. When you go to hire somebody, you don't want to bypass someone because they don't have that A+ that you could get them in 2 weeks training. So that's my 2 cents.
Oh, fantastic, Tony. Anything else, guys? Dylan, anything you're looking for? Or, oh, sorry, Micah, go ahead.
Yeah, Joel mentioned ICIT. We assist counties with this type of process. So if you're a county that is indeed looking to hire somebody and you want some expertise, we're always happy to look over resumes. We're happy to sit in on interviews. We've done that for a number of counties, and I think obviously you want to have somebody who's technically qualified, but you also want to make sure that that person is a good person. There's a lot of IT folks who are great IT people, but they may not be a good fit for a county position just because the role is so varied, right? You're supporting a lot of different departments. You need to talk to the board. You need to know how to present things, how to work with people. So, there's a lot more to it than just technical knowledge. And like I said, we're happy to happy to help out if somebody's looking at hiring somebody.
Micah, that's a great point. And I think what you're saying, I think, is the most important point here, is that you can train the technical side. You can teach technical skills. You can't teach personality. I mean, you don't have enough time to do that, unfortunately.
Not yet, at least. I hope that answered the question. Katie, was there anything else?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of that. What are your thoughts, or I guess, can you give an overview on hiring a dedicated IT person for your county versus outsourcing?
Ooh, yeah. Well, I think Micah covered it pretty well. I mean, ICIT, we've got this Paying IT Forward project that we've been doing since 2011, and I think we've been to 35 counties. Is that
37 now?
37. Okay, thanks, Andrew. And a part of that has always been, the assessment is, where are you folks at with your technology? What resources do you need? And, there's some really great, IT vendors out there, that we utilize, even though, our county has IT, they've got me. But, the vendor, the IT vendor out there is still somebody that needs to be a part of that equation, whether it be, they're the main provider of IT for that county, and that county does very well in that environment. Or, what we've seen here lately is this progression of technology in the county space, especially with cybersecurity, especially with election security, where the county is needing a little bit more internal resources. And that's where that on-staff IT professional can really start making a difference in that county world. And like I said before, we a lot of counties don't have the expertise to hire somebody, so we'll come in and help with that process, and hopefully make sure that you get somebody that is a good fit. Andrew was one of those projects. We're sorry to Marion County. We apologize profusely, but that's one of many out there that have been very good success stories. Anything to add? What's that, Katie?
Oh, I was just saying thank you.
Yeah, Andrew, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think there's definitely, like Joel said, there's definitely pros and cons to having a vendor versus an in-house IT person. But I think what most counties maybe don't realize is they're bigger, and maybe not necessarily bigger is the right word, but they're more widespread than you think that you are. And when I say widespread, I mean from a technology perspective, you have a lot of different technologies that most, we call them MSPs, managed service providers, aren't used to seeing. So most MSPs do not see a combination of a 24/7 sheriff's department and a high-level auditor's office dealing with election stuff and dealing with state entities like the DOT and things like that. There's just so many different business units and business practices and things that are so unique to county government that most MSPs who support small businesses, it's a different type of technology, different type of IT. And so what we typically find is when an MSP comes into a county, they can only do so much. And it's because there's just so many different specialized things that counties deal with. And it really does take a person to, in most cases, to know and learn all those specialized applications and processes, and dealing with elected officials. Can we call them personalities? What do we call so dealing with different department heads and elected officials and all kinds of things. It's just a different kind of challenge that MSPs. I came from an MSP. I owned a MSP before coming to Marion County, and it just is a vastly different world than what they're used to.
Do you want to define MSP for everybody, Andrew?
Managed service provider.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that's very well said. So I mean, there's plenty of room at the table for all flavors of this thing, depending upon what the county's needs are. But, most MSPs are used to, a company that has a president, a vice president, a very vertical stack as far as, the folks you answer to, where a county is very, horizontal. You've got a lot of chiefs or department heads that need care and feeding, and so that IT person has to be flexible enough to be able to sit down and talk to the sheriff about their needs, as well as the auditor with her needs or their needs, and then the recorder. So it gets to be it's kind of a tricky thing. County government is a different animal unto itself.
All right, we'll jump into the next one. How do you tell when an email is suspicious? Like, what should you look out for in an email to tell whether it's a phishing or spam? Can you give us a little bit on that?
Sure, Dylan.
Yeah, I always start out by looking at like the email, where it came from, what the email address is. We actually receive a lot, being the association of people creating emails that look almost identical to our emails, or at least have our names in it, and can really catch you off guard. So for me, I first start off by looking at the email, who it's from.
Yeah, I think poor Rachel was the victim of somebody impersonating her and was sending out quite a few emails to counties and trying to get people to click on things and respond to things. So Micah, anything else you want to go a little bit more in depth maybe?
Sure. So I think oftentimes what happens with hackers is they love to get a hold of an email account that you think is familiar. So whether it's somebody from a law firm that your attorney's office works with, or a state agency that your auditor works with, or they love to make it look like a legitimate agency. So looking at the email address is a great first place to start. And then verifying that it's actually an email you're expecting. So if you get if you're in the auditor's office, and this has been going on frequently, you get an email that somebody's asking to have their payroll bank information changed. An email is not a great way to make that change. So maybe setting up policies where those types of changes need to go through a different process to take place prevents those types of emails from coming in. But looking at what they want you to do, usually it's clicking on a link or opening a document. And so if you hover over a link in an email, it usually tells you where it's going to go. So that's a good place to look. Are you expecting a document from this person? If you're not expecting an invoice, or you're not expecting whatever document is coming from this person, verify it first. Call the person up and say, hey, did you send me this document? If the answer is no, then don't open it. So I think verifying that unusual looking emails are coming from those people is a great first start.
Yeah, I think one we'll come back to this every once in a while, is the treasurer spear phishing campaign that went on 3-4 years ago. Very well done campaign. The bad guys did their homework, they did their research. It looked like it came from the actual board of supervisors, one of the board of supervisors. It named names in the email. It described the processes that a treasurer's office would go through. And, we had some treasurer's office, the only reason they didn't send the money out was they didn't know how to do a wire transfer. If they would have known how to do a wire transfer, that money would have went out of the county. So I think, Micah hit it really well, is trust but verify. It's okay. Yeah, that looks a little suspicious, or that seems a little crazy to me. Why don't I reach out to that individual and just make sure that this is a legitimate email?
Yeah, and Joel's right as usual, and Micah's even more right, which is more usual. The Reaganomics trust but verify is a good idea. I think picking up the phone is the cheapest, easiest solution. Is that if you get an email that doesn't look right, pick up the phone. I know for you Gen Z kids out there, Dylan, it's tough to get you to do that. But if you get an email that doesn't make sense, or it's out of the usual, in law enforcement, the way that we justify a lot of weird stuff is called totality of circumstances. So when we look at all the things in there, what email address is it coming from? What time was it sent? How is it worded? Do you have grammatical errors, that sort of thing? Are they asking you to do something you've never done before, like do a wire transfer? That all goes into the totality of things. If it seems hinky, if you get a bad feeling about it, it's probably not legitimate. Also, if you're asked to make any major purchase by using iTunes gift cards, also probably not legitimate. So if you're buying a new car and they want to be paid in gift cards, no. And a lot of this is covered in your security awareness training. So if you do the old sans Securing the Human, or if you do the proof point offering from OCIO, something like that, they will cover a lot of good indicators for your end users to look for. But it's tough to do. The people that do this, they do it for a living. They make millions of dollars doing this. So there will be good fishes coming through.
Yeah, great. I think we covered that really well. And I think Tony makes a great point. The education is an ongoing process, especially in the world of technology. I mean, the bad guys are up in their game, every day, because there's dollars out there, and we have to do the same thing. We have to be proactive and really, telling our users, hey, watch out for this or watch out for that. So we're all in this together. So I think the more everybody can be on that same page and driven towards that same goal of being more cyber secure, the better, county government is going to be.
Thank you. Then Jennifer had another question. She states auditors are doing cybersecurity training quite frequently. Do other affiliates have trainings, or is ISAC willing to do presentations to those affiliates at ISAC conferences?
Absolutely. I know, we've done continuing education for the treasurer's offices at ISAC programs. We've done it for the assessors. I think we did a 2.5 hour one, if I'm not. It was a long time, wasn't it, Micah?
It was, yeah. We did that one. We went to the assessors conference. We did that one for that was a conference we did. I think we've been to. I think we visited the Board of Supervisors affiliate as well. So I think we've been to quite a few of the affiliates talking about cybersecurity. So we're happy to do it. If somebody's tired of hearing about cybersecurity, we don't have to, but we are happy to talk about it.
And like Tony mentioned, there are some great programs out there, that you can run and educate your end users and your employees. But that's an ongoing process. It's just not a static, check the box and you're done. This is something that you got to keep on top of and keep going. And that's, part of our responsibility as IT professionals is to make sure, those things are getting done and our end users are comfortable, being able to utilize the technology that we're giving them.
I'd like to, I saw in the chat there, it looks like Jennifer Garms said that it looks like other affiliates are getting click happy. And I'd like to make a couple points. First off, as long as Melvin Hauser, our county auditor, is still signing my paychecks, the auditor can do no wrong. So that's definitely true. The second one is there's a good point to that, and that is that if you're looking at ways to secure your network, splitting things up, isolating things, segmenting your network is a big deal, because your auditor's office, he does elections, handles your money, handles your real estate. There's no reason in a lot of cases that office needs to be able to talk. Their computers need to be able to talk to the office next door if it has nothing to do with their job. And there are so many networks in our counties and in companies all over the world that are just flat, where every computer on the network can talk to every other computer on the network. If you have an infection, say in your maintenance department, your buildings and grounds, or your recorder's office, it could potentially spread to the auditor's office where you've got some more dangerous stuff, or your sheriff's office, for example. So getting those things segmented out is an important point as your network grows, because it's just too easy to go get in on a target that's a little bit easier to infiltrate, and then to work your way into something high value. So just I thought that was a good point there.
Well, and Tony, we talked about training, and that's great, but we also want to do some testing as well. So we train our users all the time with security awareness training, but we also test our users as well, just to make sure that it's sinking in. And so I'm sure a lot of your counties do this as well, but every so often you might be getting emails from your IT department or somebody internally in your office that's testing your users. And so our systems will test our users and tell us how often people do click on something that's not appropriate or not legitimate. And that gives us a little bit of an idea on who maybe needs some additional training. Sometimes the training just doesn't sink in or doesn't work for everybody. And so that's an opportunity. We try to make it non-punitive. And so we make sure that, users that maybe need a little extra training get some extra help. So if you're if you know folks in your county, Jennifer, that's clicking too much, maybe they just need a little extra training.
And Andrew makes a great point. I know before we started implementing a phishing education, and phishing our employees, our first phishing test, it was 35% click through. So we had, excuse me, we had 35% of our employees that were clicking on bad emails. Now we're down around that 1 or 2% on and I test them about twice a month. So that, and I've got people that are scared to open emails now. So, which is, fantastic as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about security on phones and tablets? Are they secure as is, or are there additional measures that should be taken to ensure security?
That's a great question. Mr. Kava, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to expound?
I think I'll say one thing shortly, and then I will defer to people that are smarter than me. But the same security concerns that you have on a desktop computer apply to mobile computers. In fact, in a lot of cases, and if you've got kids, you know this, there are people that don't even use desktop computers anymore. Everything is done on a mobile device, but there are good ways to secure those devices. Over.
Well, nobody is smarter than Tony Kava, so we'll just establish that right now. But I think Tony makes a valid point. We've got a generation, Dylan, that primarily that's their communication tool. Laptops and desktops are a thing of the past. So the bad guys know this, and so they've made sure that they can utilize those platforms to be able to monetize and get things out of those devices. So there's certain things you can do. I mean, the big thing, just like anything, if you're being mobile, don't connect to a hotspot at a Starbucks. Nowadays, these devices have VPNs built into them, or you can get VPNs for these. So I think that's a big thing. Whenever I travel, I make sure I'm on a VPN if I'm connecting to a Wi-Fi or anything like that, so that I don't accidentally get into a bad guy's Wi-Fi and he's reading all my traffic. That's one of the tools. Micah, Andrew, anything else you guys would?
Yeah, if it's a personal device, you can do encryption, you can make sure you've got a decent password on it, that type of thing. If it's a county-owned device, then hopefully it's managed by some sort of mobile device management where they can, if you lose the device, it can be remotely wiped. There's some other management features that some of the enterprise solutions have for managing mobile devices. So it just depends on what type of information is on it, who owns the device, and how it's managed. But certainly you want to make sure that you take care of your device and don't just leave it easily unlocked and easily accessible.
Dylan, is there anything ISAC is doing with mobile devices?
No. No.
I feel so much safer.
No, I mean, can't you, thinking like emails and stuff, and you can like force encryption and stuff like that. I'm trying to think what that policy was, but it's been a while. No, I was just thinking that I think as time goes on that mobile devices are going to be more targeted. Right now a lot of stuff comes through email and clicking, and I think a lot of things are going to be specifically crafted for, your Androids and your iOS devices. So just something to look out for.
I think one thing that, and it kind of pertains to these, these devices is, two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. That's one of the things we're pushing very hard in our space right now is, if you want to access email, or if you want to access your, your application on your desktop, or if you want to access your laptop, or anything that, you want to get into your data, make sure that you've got two-factor turned on or multi-factor turned on. So, it's something, like a password, and something you own, like a phone. So that's, that's two ways of getting to your data. If the bad guys happen to get your password, which they don't have hopefully they don't have your phone, or else you're probably up a creek. But that this is something you own that the bad guys shouldn't have. So it just, it makes that layer, the layering of your cyber defense that much stronger. And let's face it, crooks for the most part are lazy, unless they're after something very, very specific. But if you've made yourself a little tougher than the next guy, they'll just go on to the next guy. Hopefully.
All right, thank you. What about online purchasing and using your debit card versus credit card to make online purchases?
Take your damn, no, I'll try and make this, I'm not going to swear, but take your debit card and throw it away. Never, ever, ever use a debit card.
If
Anybody else want to expound on that?
If you have to use debit, so not everybody has sterling credit like Joel Rohne and those fancy people up in Worth County. But if you have to use a debit card, there is something you can do, and that is don't use your PIN code. When you're if you're doing a transaction, if you're at Walmart or whatever, don't use your PIN code. Choose credit instead of debit, because if you choose credit, you get the same protections that you would have with a credit card. You're not going to be liable for more than $50. Things like that. If you put the PIN code in, that becomes an ATM transaction. You don't get those legal protections. Additionally, use the chip, credit or debit. You always use the chip if you can, because the swipe is easily cloned, and that's how people clone credit cards. The chip is almost impossible to clone, so you'll be safer. But what happens a lot of times when you go to the gas station or whatever, there's a little insert in there that says out of order, use the swipe. Well, yeah, that's a problem. Another thing you can do, you've probably seen those YouTube videos. You can pull on the face of like a device at a cash register or on your gas pump, that sort of thing. At your ATM, you can pull on those to see if something comes out. The problem is that the newest technologies do not. The newest technologies either sit very deeply inside the slot there and you're not even going to know it's there, or in case of a gas pump, they don't have to do anything with the actual slot where you put the card in. It goes inside the device. So pulling, still a good thing to do, especially at a checkout line, because those things are usually overlay skimmers. But in a lot of places, it doesn't make a difference. Use the credit, assume that your card is going to get compromised at some point, but at least you're not going to be liable for more than $50. And most banks don't even hit you for that. They're usually kind to their customers.
One thing I would recommend, especially if you're traveling, or maybe this is something you could, cash cards. So you can get a Visa cash card, you can load it up, and then you can use it just like a credit card would. But if you lose that cash card or somebody hacks that cash card or skims it, you're only going to be out whatever's loaded on that cash card. It's a little bit of a pain, but it gets you away from having to use that debit card, which like I think I mentioned, maybe don't use it. I think I said that.
I'm so glad though you said cash card, because I was worried you were going to say traveler's checks, given your advanced age.
So what do you guys recommend for online purchases? I think that's what they were asking.
So, credit cards, Dylan, that's, or even a cash card. I'll use a cash card for online purchases as well. It just the amount of risk that you open yourself up to when you're using a debit card, because you're using your money and it's tied to your bank account. I know I had my daughter was using a debit card there for a while, and no matter what I said, she wouldn't get rid of it. So we had a really big conversation, spirited conversation, and now she has a credit card and then also a cash card that I think mom actually loads up for. I don't tend to help my kids out that way, but
you do make a good point, Joel. And I still am not saying throw away your debit card if you can't get a credit card or whatever. If you do a transaction online, that's still going to be a credit transaction. Just don't put your PIN in anywhere. Keep your PIN out of it. It's still going to be annoying though, because as Joel points out, if your card gets stolen and there's charges racked up on it, that's going to come out of your bank account. Until that gets squared away, you might have zero in your bank account. That could make for a very tough week, and ramen noodles instead of pizza. So yeah, if you can do a credit card, do a credit card. If you can't, just never use the PIN code with your transaction.
So throw away your debit card there, Dylan.
Yeah, definitely good to know. I always use a credit card.
Good man. Good man. Well, you're independently wealthy, so you should.
Your card or someone else's?
Yeah, exactly.
Bill's card, probably. How are we doing, Katie?
All right, next up. So can you tell us what the latest criminals and hackers are doing to try to phish it for your information? What should we be looking out for?
Take it away, Mr. Kava.
You can't just keep coming back to me. I don't know all this stuff. I just keep Googling it over on this other monitor. So what you're seeing is it's the attacks are getting better and better, I think, because over the years, it used to be we could just look for, poorly written, poorly constructed sentences, and you still see some of that. But a lot of times the phishing emails you get these days, they use the real logos. It's going to be, if it's Chase Bank, it's going to have Chase's real logo. It's going to direct you to a site that looks identical to the Chase site. You have to look very closely to catch these things. One of the things we talked about passwords, we talked about password managers, is the attackers that get into your accounts. They don't usually have to guess your password. They already know it. They know it because it was exposed in a breach. If you use the same password multiple places, it's going to get out in a breach at some point. Go to Have I Been Pwned? You can Google it, pwned, P-W-N-E-D, which is a cool way of saying owned. But basically, haveibeenpwned.com, you can search for an email address that you have and see if it's shown up in any breaches, any of hundreds of different breaches. And what'll happen is, say you use the same password on LinkedIn a couple of years ago that you used for Gmail. Attackers now have your password from LinkedIn. They're going to use it to get into your Gmail account. If you don't turn on multi-factor authentication, a password's all it takes. And if you use the same passwords everywhere, that's how they'll get in. And once somebody gets into your email account, which is, that's kind of the keys to the kingdom, because when you go to log into Target or Amazon or wherever else and you forget your password, what do? You hit forgot password, they send you an email. So as soon as somebody controls your email account, it's game over. They control everything that you've got. So in any case, I think that the phishing emails have gotten a little bit better. The websites look a little bit better. The attacks have gotten more sophisticated. Thankfully, we're not, the federal government. So we don't get, the Russians aren't coming for us yet. So that's not the concern. But we do have money, even if it's a little tiny amount, because we work for county governments, it's still money. And the criminals don't care where it comes from. A lot of these attacks are not targeted at you because of, you're a county auditor, a county recorder or whatever. They're targeted at you because you have an email address and because you might have a bank account. So that's my 2 cents on it. Is it's the attacks have gotten a little bit better, but some of the same things that you were doing to protect yourself before still work. Use unique passwords for everything. Use a password manager. Turn on multi-factor authentication, sometimes called two-factor authentication or 2FA. Andrew, use that everywhere, and that will help. But be skeptical. Best of all, pick up the phone and call. If the bank emails you and says that there's something wrong with your account, if you get an email saying your Netflix password is expired, there's always ways to check that that are manual, that don't involve clicking on the link. That's somebody else can build on that or destroy it.
I would say the ones that always fascinate me is when you're giving out information, you might not necessarily realize that. You think about all the surveys that come through on social media asking for, what was your childhood's best friend? What's your dad's middle name? You answer all this and you get some stupid nickname, but really all that stuff is harvesting pretty much probably any answer that you might have as a security question to get into your account. So I always find the ones that you might not necessarily realize what you're doing, but you're the one giving out your information. I always find those interesting. Got to watch out for those.
Good, valid points. Yeah, and your TikTok, that's been fantastic lately, Dylan. I've been following you there, so you've been doing a great job there.
And don't use your birthday. What was it, Tony? Don't use your birthday and your social security number in your pins, or I don't remember what the other ones were.
No comment, because I got to go testify about stuff like that.
So I think statistics have shown that 90% of all ransomware attacks have been email. So if like Tony was saying, if we could shut down that email vector or make our end users more aware of bad things coming through email, we can shut down 90% of these attacks that are coming in at us, which that I think that's a pretty darn good end goal to make happen. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, just want to add one thing. It's a good question in terms of what are the latest attacks, and the fact is that even as IT professionals, we can't keep up with every single latest attack. There are huge companies like Microsoft and FireEye and some of these Cisco that have dedicated teams to keeping track of all of these attacks. So it's simply impossible for us to keep track of them all. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be aware of what's going on. But my point is that you want to make sure that you have multiple layers of security. So you want to have, you want to have your email, checked before it comes into your county with advanced protection, right? You want to have your computers with endpoint detection. So you have protection on every single computer in your company. You want to have it checked where even if you accidentally click on a malicious link. So, at Sioux County, if somebody accidentally clicks on a malicious link, we've got a couple ways to, potentially block that even from working properly if a user does make a mistake and clicks on a wrong link. So having as many layers of protection in place as you can, as your county can afford or as your board will approve, is really what you want to have. So that, because what's going to happen is at some point something's going to happen in your county, and you want to have ways to kind of mitigate that damage from those attacks. So it's great to know what the attacks are. Sometimes there's security patches that need to get applied to your computer to fix some easy vulnerabilities. But sometimes it's just simply having a lot of security in place from companies that spend all of their time trying to secure people. So just make sure you're as secure as you can be.
And the hope is that, the more secure you are at work and practicing those kind of things, the more secure you're going to be at home and doing your day-to-day business as well. So that, that is the end goal, is to make all of us safer, as we interact online.
Thank you. And that was the end of our questions, but I guess if you guys would just like to leave our attendees with one last piece of advice or suggestions on cybersecurity, feel free.
So on behalf of the ICIT folks, I'm just going to push the resource that our affiliate brings to the table for counties. We don't have to come out and do an assessment or something like that. If there's an issue that you folks are having out there, please pick up the phone, give one of us a call, or call ISAC, and they'll get us involved. We can provide like I said, a host of resources to the counties out there, or at least give you some guidance in what you might be looking at or what should be doing. So I think it's best to go ahead and don't be reactive, be proactive as much as you possibly can. Micah, Andrew, and Dylan, say something.
I'll do this to me. I'm not good at on the spot, man. I think yours was a perfect closing remark.
Thank you, Dylan. I appreciate you helping me out there, sir.
Perfect. Well, if anyone else doesn't have any other comments, I'd just like to take this moment to thank our presenters. It's been a very great presentation. This session was being recorded and will be posted to the ISAC website, so please feel free to refer back to it if needed. And thank you so much for attending.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.